And we are live. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you so much for stopping by to check out this week's edition of Movies Are Terrible, the podcast. Joining me on the line is very special guest. I'd like to welcome back to the show, Caleb Miles of Caleb Says Stuff. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, man. How's it going? I feel like I should be doing like one of those story time intros because I have a book and a recliner.
You look very comfortable.
Hello, thank you. I am. I'm actually. This is extremely comfortable. Way more comfortable than my old VR computer desk chair.
Gotta ask you, man. You've been watching the the Mr. Rogers documentary or something, huh?
I want to see it. I've been wanting to see it.
You kind of had a Mr. Rogers vibe going.
I do. I got it with the books and everything. I just look. I was like, of course, I have a stack of Ninja Turtle books next to me.
Oh, we're gonna talk a little bit about Ninja Turtles here in just a minute.
Yeah, and just by random chance, I have literally like a ton of different books by me of Ninja Turtles. So.
Oh damn! I like the art on those.
Oh yeah, and the IDW series is phenomenal.
So yeah, we've got some cool topics that we're gonna discuss with you guys today. Obviously, if you are aware of this space, then you have no doubt seen a lot of the trailers that we're going to talk about that came out of Comic-Con over this past week. So we're going to kind of count those as the movie news headlines this week. And then we are going to jump into a hot take issue involving James Gunn and Disney's recent decision to part ways with him due to some tweets that he made. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get to all of that stuff here shortly. But as I mentioned, we're gonna talk a little bit about the Ninja Turtles in a segment that we like to call "What Are You Watching?" Man, that is an original fucking title, isn't it?
That is. That's provocative.
It's not pulling any punches. Yeah.
Like there's anti-entendres. There's not even a double entendre. You got a signal in there. There's nothing. It's just, what are you on? But yeah, I've been watching. I've been catching up on anime. I just finished Parasite, which I got the wife to watch, and she enjoyed. The last episode gets a little philosophical for her taste. I'm a weirdo, so I enjoyed it. I also been watching. I got caught up on the 2012 Ninja Turtles. I've been catching up on. Which, if people haven't seen the 2012 Ninja Turtle show, it's actually phenomenal. It's one of the better iterations of the Turtles. Well, as far as like not comics, but like one of the better iterations on television.
Is that the 3D rendered one that TMNT was based on?
Yes, that one's actually really, really good.
Okay.
That one's a phenomenal one. I think it's a good balance for the people like me who are fans of the comic. I'm not a big fan of the 80s cartoon. I think out of the original trilogy, I only like the first one. Secret of the Ooze is garbage. I don't care what anyone says, and the third movie's bad too. But I think that show did a good thing of making every fan happy. Like, it had the slapstick humor, but not too much. It had serious elements. The last episode I just watched, they just killed a bunch of characters off. So they actually don't pull. They take it a little farther. Ultimately, I heard that's like. Yeah.
I had no idea. Yeah, you say you didn't really like the 80s cartoon. Obviously, that was my introduction to these characters. But yeah, you mentioned that you've been watching the newest series, and I think, what is it, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this was a thing I was not excited about as soon as I heard. Not because of the art. I actually think Turtles fans are pretty big crybabies. I think they get caught up in nostalgia. In fact, I think they have a very unrealistic view of what that original show is. As someone who's watched the original show pretty recently, it's unwatchable. It's pretty bad. It got me into it. But it's unwatchable. It's a really bad show. This show definitely is inspired by the 87 cartoon, which for a lot of people, I think that sounds like a good thing because they haven't actually watched the 87 cartoon in, 20, 30 years.
Right.
But I think for people who actually have watched it in a while, it's funny because I see a lot of comments, people going, "Oh, this is not as good as the original Turtles." I'm like, actually, this is pretty similar. The characters though in this are horribly annoying, especially April O'Neil. And April O'Neil's never been a good character, but it's very reminds me of like Animaniacs meets Ninja Turtles with the art of like Dexter's Laboratory. That's kind of the best way to describe it.
It's a really good way of describing it. So when you told me that you had been watching it, I decided to at least go and watch the pilot for it because I am somebody who considers myself a Ninja Turtle fan, not in the same way that you are, and I guess the reason is probably the environment that I grew up in. It was just a lot more, I was watching a lot more cartoons and stuff than I was reading comics. And when I got into comics, I was at an age where I thought the Ninja Turtles was something else. Anyways, I say all that to say I had all of the action figures, and I loved illustration as a kid growing up, and the Ninja Turtles were something I just would constantly go back to and draw over and over and over again. So I've always been a fan of the kind of design and the aesthetic of them. And so anyways, I went and watched Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, kind of keeping in mind, just a little bit that I had heard from you. And there are definitely elements that I enjoy about it, mostly the art and the fact that each of the turtles has a very distinct look and style and all of those different things. Their personalities seem much more delineated. April O'Neil is almost completely unrecognizable, as is Master Splinter, and I didn't really like the storyline. I was thinking more like Teen Titans Go meets Ninja Turtles, but actually what you said is so much closer to right on the mark, I think.
It's extremely slapstick, even for Ninja Turtle standards to me, and the
Caleb, I lost you there for just a minute. You were saying something about the pacing.
Yeah. So the pacing, what I was going to say is the pacing for me is a breakneck speed. It just goes a mile a minute to the point where I don't feel like there's really a story. It's just one beat per beat to the next. It's like joke, fight, joke. I do think the animation's actually pretty slick. I don't mind the character designs, even though they're not really my aesthetic thing. But the fight scenes are very well done.
They are.
But struggled to get through the first episode, and I got like halfway through the second, and I'm like, I might watch it just because I'm such a diehard fan, but it's going to be hard. It's very, I kept thinking Animaniacs is what I kept thinking the whole time. Like, it was especially April. I was kind of shocked that they took her, amped her up so much, because she's, as the humans, kind of always been like, they're tied to humanity and normalcy. And they turned her into a caricature and a loud, crazy character that I as someone who does not like April pretty much in every incarnation, except for the 2012 cartoon, they actually kind of made some interesting choices with her. But this is by far the worst version of her, in my opinion.
What's the name of the is it Snarfle from He-Man? Like, when did April O'Neil get a Snarfle? And like, what? it's a weird choice. They just made weird choices that make it not feel as Ninja Turtles, but I do really like the cell shading. You know, there's a lot of imagery in this particular series that's cast in shadows way more than anything in the 87 series was anyway. So I do like the stylized artistic choices in it. Again, April O'Neil nothing about that character reads April O'Neil to me, and I was actually a little disappointed in the way they portrayed Master Splinter as well. It's kind of what you said. They dumbed down the characters, and they just made them more of cartoon characters, I suppose.
I agree. They are very much cartoon characters. Yeah, Splinter was another thing. I didn't understand the portrayal of. There's been multiple portrayals of Splinter, obviously, where some he's more of a father figure, some he's more of a sensei. I actually like the 2014 live action movie take on him, where he's a father figure, but he's very, very like traditional Japanese, rough on the kids. But it's coming from a loving place, but like he will beat their ass. I think that's kind of an interesting take on the character. Mm-hmm. The whole I'm just a lazy bum who hangs out on the couch take, I don't really enjoy that at all. He doesn't feel like he's training them at all. I mean, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we won't. Honestly, I don't know how much. I definitely won't watch the whole thing unless something drastically happens in the next couple episodes.
I was kind of scrubbing through it. Do we get any allusions to the Foot Clan or Master Shredder that I missed out on?
I saw a clip. I haven't gotten this far yet. The Foot Clan, and they're like totally different creatures in it. They have like foots painted on their face, and they look more like Tibetan monks almost. And they use origami creatures to fight people. Yeah, it's very weird. I regarded Ninja Turtles as weird. It always has been. And I don't know if you ever saw The Next Mutation, the live action TV show.
No, I did not.
It's one of the worst things ever. One of the worst things ever. It reminds me of, to me, this drew heavily from the 1987 show and heavily from Next Mutation, which are my two least favorite iterations of Turtles of all time.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was like, And the 2003, if there's any fans watching, the 2003 show is actually phenomenal. It's the best TV version. 2012, I'd say, is next. But the 2003 stays fairly accurate to the comics, which is rare. I would say that's the closest thing to the Turtles that we'll get, like, of the 92 X-Men. You know, that was pretty faithful to the comics.
Yes.
The 2003 Turtles is a good representation. If someone doesn't ever want to read the comics, but they kind of want to get some of the high points, that follows it, and there's a lot of the same characters.
You're kind of selling me on it, actually, because I'm not. I mean, I'm familiar with the comic book and kind of the tone of it and stuff, but I've actually never read one. So I went, this whole week I've been remodeling the apartment. We had a kitchen fire. I told you a little bit about that. And
yeah.
So finally got everything tightened up. Basically all I've been watching the entire week is fucking paint on the walls dry, which is very exciting, very fun. But I did make it out to go see, I've got my AMC Stubbs A+ membership, which is fantastic. But I went and saw Sorry to Bother You. Have you seen it?
No, I actually really want to see it, though, because I am inside sales at my new job, so I'm pretty much I'm the asshole who calls people. I'm pretty much a telemarketer, except for I don't know if they're commission based in that as well, but that's how I am. So I'm kind of interested to see it, to see how. I think as someone who has an insight on a different angle of it, I think it'd be kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. Now that you say, I mean, I didn't see the movie through that lens, but I'm sure that there are absolutely levels to it that are going to speak directly to people in telemarketing. It was so offbeat and weird that it's hard not to just really, really enjoy it. Movies like that just don't get theatrical releases. So just from a originality standpoint, I think that it's a really cool movie. I think the direction, like the style of Boots Riley, is really unique and fresh, and some people have compared it to early Spike Lee. I can see elements of that kind of, but it goes so left, you know, like it just anything that I was expecting that it was going to be, and I heard it was weird, it was so much fucking weirder than that and completely unpredictable. So yeah, I highly recommend it. If I was gonna quantify it and give it a rating, I think it would be somewhere in the 3.5 range. You know, way better than your average movie. So definitely think you should check that out. Tessa Thompson's really good in it. Is his name Lakeith Stanfield from Atlanta's really good in it. So definitely think that's one worth checking out.
You're kind of selling me on it because it looked all right to me. I was like, oh, it might be kind of fun, but you're selling that as pretty weird, which I didn't get that from the trailer. I was like, oh, okay, I very much got early Spike Lee from the trailer. Mm-hmm. So the fact that like weird is really, really selling me on it. Oh, I also saw Solo. I finally got it up to seeing Solo. Speaking of what are we watching?
You mentioned that to me briefly, and I really want to hear what your thoughts are on it.
So I went in going, okay, I'm going to watch a horrible movie. I'm going to laugh at it. It's going to be really bad. I right away loved the visuals. I like the tone. I'm a big guy. You'll hear me all the time. I'm very much about tone and feel for a movie. That can make or break a film. I'm like, the movie feels kind of too campy in certain ways, not intentionally, or too light, it can ruin it. If it feels too dark, very rarely ruins it for me. But the tone of the film I liked right away. I wasn't sold on, I cannot think of his name, but the guy who plays Solo at the beginning.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yes. At first I was like, I don't like him. And I don't think it was his portrayal. I think it was, to me, Solo is Harrison Ford.
Of course, yeah.
And so once I kind of got over that, I actually really liked his portrayal of it. There's a couple things I didn't like. I absolutely hated the droid.
L3? Yeah.
Oh, SJW3 or whatever the hell it was called. Yeah, I hated that. That whole part bothered me. And I actually really didn't like Donald Glover. I actually found him grating in every scene he was in.
I think that's so fascinating because you and I are on an island. I don't know if it was that my expectations were for him to play it differently, but it came off as just it was awkward. Like I don't know. There was something about it, like you said, grating. I just found it to like not hit the mark of what he was supposed to be.
I think the problem is I thought with Solo at first, I was like, I want more of an impression of Harrison Ford. But I actually liked more putting his spin on that character and letting him become that character. I actually think that's a better approach. Where Donald Glover, to me, was just a cheap knockoff of Billy D. Williams, like where he was just doing an impression of him.
Sure.
And I found it grating. It made me hate that character.
No kidding.
Yeah, like I was like, I don't like this character. Like, just shoot him and be done with it. It was, but luckily he's not in it that much, and the robot isn't. Mm-hmm. That part for me, it was kind of a roller coaster. I liked it, and then I started to love it. Really, really started to love it. And then those two characters came in, and I was like, oh, okay, I hate this. I see the movie that everyone's talking about that they hate. Then once they got out, I actually ended up really, really enjoying the film. Blew me away, honestly. I would say it's one of the better Star Wars films. I would put it in my top 3, which is super controversial.
So real quick for the listeners, what else is in that top 3? Easily
for me, number 1 is Empire.
Sure.
I think Solo, I'd have to see it again before I definitely slot in there, but I would say Solo's probably my number 2.
You are so full of shit, bro.
Yeah. Dude, it had the most same tone as Empire. It's the closest thing to Empire. I mean, I haven't seen Rogue One, but that's the only...
Oh, dude, you're going to like Rogue One, I think.
Well, this made me want to see it because I didn't want to see it at all, but this movie actually made me want to see it. I would definitely say Solo's the best of the new Star Wars films, easily.
I think kind of understanding your reasoning behind why you liked Solo, I think you would probably enjoy Rogue One. It is obviously a kind of more standalone that's not tied into that huge mythology, and it's a different tone. I found it to be more like, and I'm sure you've heard it, more boots on the ground warfare in the first time we'd ever seen Star Wars in that light. So I really enjoyed that one, and I don't know, man. Like, I see the appeal of Solo. There were so many elements that were really working for me. What I felt that it lacked, and I mean, I'd love to hear your take on this. What I felt that it lacked was true emotional resonance, and A, did you get that out of it? And then B, do you get that out of the other Star Wars movies, you know?
I was just going to say, emotional resonance to me is something that is severely lacking in all Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, for me in general, I think they are fun family films. So that's always kind of where I put them in. I always say, and people, I always say it as a diss, and I never say I think I'm dissing. I don't. I always say they're fun family films, or like even like kid films. They're great. I
Yeah,
love them
I'm with you.
for that. But they're not. To me, that's why Empire is the best. It has a more emotion. I would even say, and even though there's a lot of problems with it, I would say Episode 3 actually has some emotion, at least attempts at it.
Uh-huh.
Whether they're hit or miss, they at least try some emotional resonance. To me, A New Hope, there is absolutely no emotion, and
100% agree with you.
there's like nothing. There's just
Mm-hmm.
it's a point A to point B. Like I don't have any tie. And honestly, Empire Strikes Back for me, there's a little bit. I mean, no, excuse me, Empire. There's Return of the Jedi. There's a little bit toward the end, but overall, that film is honestly one of my least favorite Star Wars films. So, I just yeah, I for me, it's weird. I always sound like I hate Star Wars. I really don't. I enjoy Star Wars. I just don't have that nostalgia rose-colored glasses. When I look at it, to where I used to, but then like I started watching it one time, just watch it with someone who's never seen it, and it'll definitely give you a different perspective of it.
I actually
Because
watched them with Victoria not too long ago, and
Mhm.
she enjoyed them, but it wasn't like some sacred cow or you know what I mean?
Exactly. They talk about when you watch it with someone who's never seen it, they talk about it much more realistically. Even when they like it or hate it, or even if they love it, even when they love it, it's not like this, sacred cow. It's not where it's the perfect film and oh
Right.
my god, I cried at this. They're like, yeah, it was fun. And you're like, yeah, that's what they are. They're fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you kind of touched on the fact that you don't have the nostalgic connection to it, and I think a lot of the emotional resonance, especially in the new trilogy, has played to your sentimentality, or mine in particular, the sentimentality of audiences towards the source material. So maybe it's easy to manipulate audiences in that way.
Oh, 100%. Like it's weird because I probably have seen Star Wars more than 90% of the people who say that they're diehard Star Wars fans. Like I grew up on it. We watched it. I probably have seen during my childhood years, literally not even joking, I probably said the original trilogy 4 or 5 times each film per year. Like we watched it staple in our house. Like it was always on. We watched it all the time. And I was one of these Star Wars fanboys. And then one day I just kind of like was like, okay, it's okay to watch something and be realistic about it and still love it, and I think for me, Solo, I think more had a backlash to Last Jedi. I think they took that out of Solo than the film itself. To me, I think it was a lot of people who were angry at The Last Jedi. And Solo is way better than Last Jedi to me, like way, way better.
See, that's fascinating because I am on the opposite end of that spectrum. I loved The Last Jedi. I was a little deflated with Solo. Like you're saying about Star Wars, I don't want to come off like I didn't have fun with Solo. It was definitely a good time for me. I can't remember what the name. Voss, Reese Voss, the new like bounty hunter type character that showed up in it. I love the design of that character. I thought that was super neat. I thought Emilia Clarke actually gave a solid performance, and I liked Alden Ehrenreich as Solo. So a lot of those things really worked for me. I felt like as a whole, I would have almost rather seen the Chris Lord and Phil Miller version of it because it would have been so unique and so much of a departure from the others.
I did love the dynamic between Chewie and Han. I thought that was
fantastic.
Spot on.
Yeah.
That to me, like Chewie stole every scene he was in for me. To me, like they could have made this movie Chewbacca and just had him just roaring through the whole thing, and it would have been phenomenal. Like he was so good in it, and I think that's what I really gravitated toward. Like the little minor spoiler. I mean, it's just dialogue spoiler where he goes, "Oh, I'm whatever, 100 and some years old." He's like, "Wow, you look really good." It was such a little Han and Chewie moment in the middle of the film.
Yes.
That, like stuff like that just made me chuckle and smile. And like I said, I'm weird about tone and the tone of this and the directing. Visually, it's one of, to me, the nicer looking Star Wars films.
I can agree with that for sure. All right, well, let's go ahead and slide into all of these trailers that we have to talk about because, I spent a lot of time on that stuff. Always a good conversation, though.
I hope I saw them all. I don't even know if I did.
There's a huge list of them, so we'll go ahead and just kind of roll through general thoughts. We don't have to deconstruct every trailer. Let me find this list that I have here. Okay. Did you see The Crimes of Grindel? Oh, we'll start all the way at the top. Aquaman.
I did watch Aquaman trailer. It looks good. I mean, it looks like a lighter version of a DC film. It looks like where they're taking the DC movies. It still very much looks like visually Zack Snyder's fingerprints all over that. But which to me is a good thing. I'm very happy about that. But it looks fun. It looks fine. It's not something I'm excited to see, but it's not something I'm like gonna rag on either.
I like how weird with it that they've gone. They are really leaning into all of the fantastical elements of it. It does have a very unique visual style, and I'm curious about it. It's piqued my interest. I love the people riding fucking seahorses and great white sharks and mosasaurs from Jurassic World. Like, all of that looks fun to me. Him getting bullied in the aquarium and all of the fucking fish, like, turning on the people. I don't know. It's got potential to be just so strange that it's fun. But, yeah, I'm curious about that one.
What do you think about all the people saying it's just a Black Panther ripoff? Have you seen this?
I saw your tweet, and without seeing other people's kind of comparisons or why they would justify it that way, I don't see it at all.
I don't either. To me, well, they're like, it's a hidden kingdom, and it's family members fighting each other for ruling the kingdom. I was like, then they're both ripoffs of The Lion King.
All stories are the same. Wonder Woman was almost that.
Yeah, I've seen it all over my Instagram feed and all over Twitter, and I'm just like, you guys, is Black Panther the first movie you saw? Like, this is... Yeah, it blows my mind.
And how many scientists, brilliant scientists, are there in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that inherited their powers from a freak accident?
Exactly.
You know,
I'm like, it's I just thought it was ridiculous. I want to be in charge of yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
So, what about? And this is one you told me about. Disenchanted is the new animated series by creator Matt Groening, obviously responsible for The Simpsons and Futurama.
This is one of my most anticipated things. I've watched that trailer like 13 times.
It looks fucking great, doesn't it?
Oh my God. So it looks like he took... So I love Futurama. I always talk about it. One of my favorite shows of all time. I literally watch it every night. I fall asleep to it every night.
No doubt.
It's my favorite, one of my favorite shows. But the thing I love about Futurama is the fun and everything, but especially once they started injecting more emotion into it in certain episodes. There's like some... And it looks like he really played toward that. This looks like it's going to have a lot of emotion in it. Yes. And I'm hoping it does.
I love the episode, obviously Fry's episode, where the dog waits for him. I can't remember what the name of the dog is right now, but that's probably my favorite episode of Futurama.
Jurassic Park. I still know the episode.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. It's legendary, I think.
That and the one with the 4-leaf clover, where he's like, "Oh, my brother stole the 4-leaf clover and have this great life." Oh man, that episode, like, there's so much of that in Futurama that I think it actually gets dismissed as just like a dumb show. And I'm like, yes, it is all those things, but it's also Rick and Morty kind of does this too. Like, Rick and Morty is a dumb show that has some really heartfelt moments, and Futurama is amazing with that. So I'm so excited to see Disenchantment because it looks like there is going to be some genuine emotion here.
Yeah, great call. I echo everything you said about Futurama. Simpsons has kind of been beating a dead horse for the better part of fucking 22 decades now, but it had its moments. What about Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald?
So I watched them. I watched the trailer. It looks good. I actually thought the last Fantastic Beasts trailer looked good. I never saw it. Did you see the movie?
I did, and it was fine. Like, I don't really have the sentimental connection to the Harry Potter franchise in general. I kind of saw some of them in the theaters and not others, and I enjoyed all of them superficially, kind of the same way as with the Fantastic Beasts. It was a beautiful looking movie, great cast, great production design, but just it didn't really move the needle for me.
That's kind of where I'm with it. I've read the first 4 or 5 books. One of my friends wanted me to read them, so I read the first 4 or 5. They're okay. They're definitely way better than the movies. I watched the first movie after reading the books because I remembered watching it as a kid, the first movie, well, a teenager or whenever it came out, and absolutely hating it. So I went back, I read the books, I watched it as an adult, and I was like, no, this movie is an awful movie, the first one. And then I watched, I think that's it. I don't think I ever watched the second. And that's my exposure to Harry Potter. I'm definitely not a fan.
So are you at a place right now where The Crimes of Grindelwald is something you'll have to skip just because you don't have the context? Are you going to watch Fantastic Beasts before it comes out?
No, I'm going to skip it.
Okay.
I have no desire.
Well, yeah, I totally understand. What about Glass? Did you see the trailer for M. Night Shyamalan's new flick?
So this one I intentionally avoided.
Okay.
So this is what I know we probably were going to talk about it. Definitely feel free to talk about it. I mean, I don't worry about that. I saw the pictures of it. James McAvoy looks like he's fucking huge in it.
Yeah,
which
he
is
does.
Insane. And just the screenshots of it was enough for me. Unbreakable is a phenomenal film. I enjoyed Split more for the performance than the movie itself, but it's still a good movie. So this is to me a must see.
So, the trailer itself doesn't actually give too much away, which I'm thankful for. It gives us a little bit of insight into a psychologist basically talking to each of these people about whether or not they actually are superheroes. It's Sarah Paulson, and I think she, brings a whole different audience in. I think a lot of people are diehard Sarah Paulson fans, which I didn't realize until... I don't know if it was one of the seasons of American Horror Story or if it was Feud. I can't remember. Oh, no. The People versus OJ maybe is what it was. But I really like the tone of the Glass trailer, and it feels like it's bridging the gap between the tone of Unbreakable and the tone of Split. And it's strange because it looks like there might be action elements in it. There's going to be action elements in it, but it also looks like a psychological thriller that explores a lot of the human psyche, and I really have liked the direction that Shyamalan has been kind of pushing himself back into. I'm a little worried because Glass looks to be another bigger project, another movie where the budget has gotten more inflated and they have more confidence in it. So I'm hoping that he'll hold on to that little bit of humbleness that he had. And continue to try to earn the good graces,
I would agree with that because I think he is as a smaller director. He's one of those directors to me who flourishes with restraint. I think he is a much more interesting guy when he does it that way. I don't really want to see a big action movie out of this, and I don't think it will be. But an action scene or two would be fine. But the way Unbreakable is for me, a perfectly paced film. That's one of those movies, like when people tell me what's a wonderfully paced film, I would point them to Unbreakable. That to me is like the right pace to where it's slow, but you're still engaged. And there's not really any action, but you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. Like, I cannot rave about that film enough. And even, like I said, I wasn't in love with Split, but I really liked Split. Like, it was a good movie.
Sure. Yeah, most definitely. So now we're getting to... Well, I'm going to actually bypass this one right now because I want to come back to it. This is one I just found out about. It's called George R.R. Martin's Night Flyers. It looks like it's going to be a sci-fi original. Real quickly, I'm fascinated because I've never seen George R.R. Martin's take on science fiction, and I fucking love his take on fantasy. That said, I haven't seen a lot of sci-fi series that I liked, but I know that since Krypton, they've been stepping up their production games, so this does have potential. It's something I'll at least watch the pilot for. What do you think?
This is the first time I've heard of it. I didn't even know this. I would definitely check it out. I never even watched Game of Thrones, so I'm not a big fantasy guy, but I am a big sci-fi guy. I have a something. It's a comic book, a graphic novel that I read that was written by George R.R. Martin that was actually pretty good. So I definitely would like to see what he does in a sci-fi setting.
So next on the docket is Shazam, starring Zachary Levi. It is the DC film about Billy Batson, who is a kid who turns into a superhero. I don't exactly know how he acquires his powers. He's similar to Superman, and this is a DC film that has an extremely different and unique tone to the rest of the DC films. Did you check this one out?
This is one of the first ones that I watched. This is one of the ones that I've been eagerly waiting.
Okay.
I think it looks phenomenal. I am so freaking excited for this movie. I always am bitching about humor in comic book movies because I think they shoehorn in with characters that I don't want to see humor in, that are lacking humor.
Uh-huh.
But Shazam, that's his whole shtick. It's like bitching about humor in Deadpool. I don't like Deadpool necessarily, but that's the humor's par for the course. And Shazam, I think the humor looks hilarious. I think he's very funny. I think the kid looked well done. It was kind of interesting because it kind of still was shot a little darker.
Yeah.
Like the thing, but then his bright suit was almost out of place in it, and I thought that was actually kind of funny. I thought it was very fitting. I'm very, very excited to see this movie.
Without the context of the tone of the trailer, people were a little bit up in arms about the way that Shazam looked. I think they wanted those super muted colors, similar to what they did with Superman. Everybody in the DCEU, Wonder Woman before her film. But, yeah, man, of all of the DC films, well, obviously Suicide Squad had one of the best trailers I've ever fucking seen of any movies. Mm-hmm. So that was one that I was really excited about seeing, and Shazam is I was excited about Batman v Superman, actually, but anyways, it's been a while, and seeing Shazam, I was like, damn, this looks like its own fun, irreverent thing. People have compared it to like Big with superheroes, and I love the concept of that. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, to me it looks hilarious, and that's what I expected going in. Like, I didn't expect. I'm one of those people, and I'm like, push DC back to being dark. Fuck it, push Marvel to being dark. I want it all dark and depressing. Shazam's not one of those characters. To me, if they would have came out with a very serious Shazam trailer, it would have just been dumb. That's not who that character is. The character's funny, at least in modern comics. Ever since I've been reading them, Shazam's been like the Tick of the DC universe.
Oh, great. Yeah, I actually watched an episode of The Tick, but that's a conversation for a different time.
Anytime you want to talk to Tick, I will talk about it with you.
Hell yeah, dude. Before we move on, and actually kind of on that note, I know that, it's been a couple days now, but I did want to just quickly say that John Schnepp passed away. He was a big influence of mine, somebody that I actually really looked up to. I was a big fan of Metalocalypse, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Metalocalypse, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, the Black Panther movie that he directed for BET or series, So I was a big fan of him in that way, and then also really liked watching his podcast. I was able to meet him one time in Pensacola, and he was a super cool guy. But kind of talking about animation made me think about the fact that he was a really prolific dude, especially in the whole Adult Swim world, which is something that I've been watching forever. So yeah. Shout out, rest in peace, John Schnepp.
Absolutely, rest in peace, Sam. He kind of was the ultimate fanboy. To me, I put him in that like Kevin Smith category. Like,
no
for
doubt.
me, I wasn't as big of a Schnepp fan as you were, but for me, like he's your Kevin Smith. Does that make sense? Like, he's the guy who influenced me. Like, I will gobble up anything Kevin Smith does, even if it's a movie I don't like. And John Schnepp to me was just that whole. There was something about him that was just very likable and genuine, and it's always sad when anyone goes, but especially when someone who seems like just a genuine person, it's always, a loss for all of us.
100%. So I saved in my opinion, the best for last. I think you and I have talked a little bit about my love of kaiju and your love of kaiju before. What did you think about Godzilla King of the Monsters trailer?
I think it looks awesome. I'm very, very excited about it. I think the tone, again, looks great. It's kind of everything I've wanted out of Godzilla. It looks like what King of the Monsters in my head looked like as a little boy.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, watching that as a kid, I always thought it was like this serious drama. Like, I was so into it, and it's not. It's horrible.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. This is like, and I thought the same thing sort of about Pacific Rim. It's like the way that we interpreted it as kids. Man, Godzilla King of the Monsters trailer, there are a couple things I really like about it, and a couple things I didn't particularly care for. I know Andrea's in the chat right now. Shout out to Andrea. What's up, buddy? And also a quick shout out to Venice Beach Sports Network and Michael Granger, who was also in the chat. I really do appreciate you guys stopping by to check out this episode of the show. But I wasn't wild about the music choice of it. I felt like they were kind of going in that Shape of Water, sense of wonder with monsters kind of thing, as opposed to going in a more epic direction. Now, granted, the Mothra reveal kind of matched the tone for me, but I thought it was extremely weird seeing King Ghidorah emerge with that particular song choice.
I actually, you make me want to go back and watch it now. I kind of want to see, because I didn't notice that. I think I was just so caught up with seeing Mothra on screen. You know?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. The visuals are incredible. The 2014 Godzilla definitely used a lot more muted color palette. Everything had a kind of more earthy tone to it. This one seems to be kind of bridging the gap between the high saturated color palettes of Kong Skull Island with what we're seeing in the Godzilla film. Also, it looks like, what's her name? Sally Hawkins is actually in this movie. She was in the 2014 Godzilla. She was in The Shape of Water. So we're getting elements of that in it. We got Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things, and the big cloud almost evokes the cloud monster from Stranger Things in it. We've got several of the cast members from Kong Skull Island, which is kind of bringing in that audience. So I like the fact that they're marketing this as broadly as they can. They've got a scene with Charles Dance where he says "Hail to the King," which obviously evokes Game of Thrones. So they're very intentionally doing little fan servicey moments within it. But I think my big takeaway from it is that shot with Godzilla's dorsals lighting up underwater when they're like observing him through that bay is phenomenal. I love the design of Rodan, and I really cannot fucking wait to see this movie and see the way that King Ghidorah ends up looking.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it, because I do think the 2014 Godzilla, I actually wasn't that big of a fan of. I actually thought Pacific Rim was a better Godzilla movie than Godzilla. I always said,
yeah,
it was a little more campy. This is one of the few things you'll ever hear me pushing for something to be lighter. And I loved the way it was directed, the first Godzilla, especially the director of Monsters. I think that's a phenomenal directed film. I loved it, but it was a little slower. I thought Kong Skull Island, I thought was a big dumb film, but that's what I expected.
Yes.
I thought it was actually pretty competent. I thought he was awesome. I do think this merges that pretty well, and it does seem kind of a good balance where it's still shot like a serious film, but it's going to be larger than life and a little pushing that boundaries. I think it looks excellent.
Yeah, man. I absolutely agree with what you said. All right, so let's move into our favorite part of the show, where we get to get a little political, a little controversial, and this week we're going to talk about Disney pulling the trigger on James Gunn over some old tweets. But why does it matter? What are the implications of this? So obviously any of you guys that are watching right now have heard that James Gunn was recently fired from Guardians of the Galaxy for some very reprehensible but stupid tweets that he made years ago. This is shocking for several reasons. Before we get into the political side of it, James Gunn is a fucking earner. You know what I mean? Like, his two Guardians movies have made like
prints money.
Yeah, man. $1.5 billion, between the two of them. Obviously, he played a big hand in Infinity War, but I don't know, man. Is that a drop in the hat for Disney as an entire entity, or should they still be concerned about that amount of money?
I think at this point it's let's be real. Marvel's put out some pretty mediocre films that people praise. It's the properties that are worth more than the talent at this point, besides on-screen talent. But I have just a lot of weird feelings about this. First of all, I do think he was joking. I think they were really distasteful jokes, but I do think they were jokes. And I really don't like people getting fired for jokes. I find that this outrage culture that we live in a little ridiculous, to where people get so offended that they go for people who make jokes. That being said, James Gunn, I'm a huge fan as a director. I'm not a fan of him on a more personal level, just from what I've seen of him. James Gunn is part of the outrage culture. And the thing that I've noticed is this all eventually turns on you. It's all of this modern day witch hunt where everyone's pointing to the next person and go, hey, look at them, they do bad things, hey, look at them, so that the fingers aren't pointed at them, but eventually it does turn to you. And I feel like James Gunn has kind of bred this culture of outrage and now is on the other receiving end. And I still don't want the guy to lose his job, obviously, and I would like to see what they do with Guardians 3, but it's kind of like you create this monster and you get swallowed up by it too.
Damn, dude, hot take, and you actually kind of opened my eyes to a different side of this very, very gray area conversation. And you mentioned pretty early in that tangent, no, I don't know what you call it, in that segment of words, that you don't like it when people get fired over jokes. It's been compared to the Roseanne situation a couple times, and it seems like people in our space are not willing to hear that, and that they shut it down very quickly. I mean, on a superficial level, this is a person who lost their job over a distasteful joke on Twitter. That's pretty fucking similar, and it's pretty hard not to make the comparison. What are your actual thoughts on comparing the two of these things?
That is a very apt comparison. And guess who said that Roseanne should have lost their job because they're a company? James Gunn. James Gunn said that.
Did he really?
When that happened. Yeah, absolutely, because he's part of this outrage culture. And the thing is, but let's be honest, this is first of all, I'll take it back. This is a political debate right now, which people don't want to hear it as that's what it is. Because there's a clearly political divide, which I hate. People need to stop looking at this team sport. If you're liberal, you support James Gunn and you hate Rosie O'Donnell. If you're conservative, you supported Rosie O'Donnell and you hated James Gunn. These are very similar things. What they did. They said some jokes that were controversial. They said some things that were controversial. And I feel like the left has pushed the narrative that we need to fire people for offensive jokes. That's been the modern left, the old school left. It used to be the right wingers who, you and me are old enough to remember when right wingers stopped jokes, but now it's the progressive left. So they pushed this whole narrative, but now it's one of their own who's always, I don't know if you follow James Gunn on Twitter. He's having a meltdown every other day. He has Trump derangement syndrome pretty heavily. He's having a meltdown every other day on there. But I also think this was politically motivated because, first of all, it was a right-wing group that released those tweets.
Yes.
I'm going to bring it back, and this is all just my opinion. The day before this happened, he was railing on, I don't know if you're familiar with Ben Shapiro, the conservative pundit.
Yes, of course.
So he was railing on him and saying his own mother should unfollow him because Mark Duplass, another actor, Mark Duplass said, hey, if you want to, I don't agree with this guy, but if you want a genuine take from a guy who's a decent person, follow Ben Shapiro. I disagree with everything he says, but he's going to be honest with you. So he got attacked by Hollywood because that's the sin in Hollywood. How dare you even say a conservative's a decent human being? That's like the sin. You can make jokes about pedophilia, but don't you dare say a conservative's a nice person. And so Mark Class put that out. James Gunn was one of the people who's like, I don't even think Ben Shapiro's mom should follow him. He said reprehensible things, this, and this. And then the next day, a conservative group pulls up old tweets on James Gunn.
Yeah.
It just seems like weird timing to me. Mm-hmm. I don't think Ben Shapiro put out like a
hit on him.
Squad.
Yeah.
No, it's not anything like that. I just think it's this modern politics that we live in where it's team sports. So it was like, hey, you went for one of our guys. We're going to show you. And there is some horrible justice that I actually don't think he should. Let me make it clear. I don't think he should have been fired. But it's kind of, if you feed this beast, it will turn on you. I guarantee you, everyone can look through all our tweets or private conversations. We're not all saints. Everyone listening to this has said some pretty reprehensible things at some point in time. We all have. That's human nature. I just think it's sad he lost his job, but hopefully more people will wake up to the fact of that this outrage culture, this horde of mindless zombies who are looking for the next less indiscretion to point out will realize, it eventually will turn on you.
Man, yeah, I see a lot of validity in what you were saying. I don't think I made myself clear at the beginning about the fact that I am a huge James Gunn fan. I remember when he was making movies like Romeo and Juliet, when he was working on The Toxic Avenger, obviously when he did Super, when he did Slither. This guy has had a long and illustrious career off making subversive and shocking content. So the fact that he made those tweets is no surprise to me. There have been all of these comics that were went after by the same guy. I can't remember his name right now, but he's the guy that came up with the whole Pizzagate scandal and wanted to say that there was a child pedophilia ring that was run by the liberal elite and Hollywood, which is ridiculous. James Gunn did make jokes concerning pedophilia. Michael Ian Black, Sarah Silverman, these people have made very subversive jokes. 10 years ago, it was called Blue Comedy. I'm actually a pretty big fucking fan of those alternative comics. So to me, it didn't shock or offend me. I didn't think they were particularly funny, especially when you do line them up to Patton Oswalt's and Michael Ian Black's. James Gunn's were pretty pedestrian, you know what I mean? But I think the idea was to evoke an emotional response out of people, because artists live for affirmation and for attention and no fucking shit, right? So no big surprise there. I do think that as this outrage culture has gotten to where it is, we have to be so much more mindful of what we say, especially on Twitter. It seems like the second you got hired by Disney, you'd hire some intern to fucking clean up your past to make sure that none of this stuff was used against you. But Disney knew who the fuck they were hiring, you know?
Oh, Disney! I bet you Disney knew about those tweets even.
They did. They did.
Yeah, they knew about them. It just, they're doing what every company does right now. It was like Roseanne, when Roseanne said what she said. I'm going to do the comparison because it's a very apt comparison. When Roseanne said what she said, I was like, yeah, it's Roseanne.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
They knew who she was They knew who they were hiring. Roseanne's insane. Yeah, I actually think Roseanne's kind of funny, but she's insane.
So,
you know, like,
do you think that the fact that Roseanne, this is fair, the fact that Roseanne said these things recently and was condemned for it, to be fair, is probably different from somebody who was exposed for this by a liberal group back in 2014. He made a public apology. He said, I'm sorry, I've grown a lot as a person since then. I look back at my old work and I'm trying to move past all of that. And to me, it's like, at what point do we start valuing forgiveness again and say, yeah, this person fucked up. We addressed it, and now we are, moving past. James Gunn hasn't made these tweets in 6 or 7 years, so if you can't grow as a person, what's the fucking point, you know?
I agree with that 100%. And just to clarify, he actually didn't apologize for these tweets. That's actually a lie that's not a lie, a miscommunication that's being told. He apologized for a different set of offensive tweets, I believe, making fun of like gays and lesbians. But still, people change. I agree with this 100%. So I do think that is a fair complaint when you're hearing people going, well, it's not the same as Roseanne. Roseanne's just current. So I do think that is a valid complaint. I'm one of these free speech guys. I think you should be able, especially in the realm of comedy, you should be allowed to say almost anything. Well, not almost anything. You should be allowed to say anything, whether it's super offensive or not. Ricky Gervais's whole new stand-up is about this. It's phenomenal, where you should be allowed to say something offensive. And he says something that is apt in this situation. Saying something offensive, saying a joke about a thing is not necessarily condoning the thing. If you make a rape joke, it's not necessarily condoning rape. It can be an anti-rape joke.
Yes.
You know? But I do think we need to live in forgiveness. There's this new thing where we keep lowering the bar of terminology and changing what is politically correct. That's fine. We can grow that. But you can't hold someone in the past to standards of today. I'm going to take this in a little different way with politics, but you'll see this with people who they'll be like, I don't know, this political figure from our past did X, Y, and Z. And you're like, yeah, those are horrible things by today's standards, but that was the thing of the time. If we get to a point where we start lowering the bar, like even what is considered racist now, you can say something that most people wouldn't even consider racist, but they've lowered the bar so low that you trip over it, but the punishment is still as high as it would have been. And here's my thing is, James Gunn hasn't said those things in a long time. And I do think people change. I have personally changed throughout my life
Sure.
pretty drastically. And I would not want people to judge me for things I've said 10 years ago, 6 years ago. And people got to also understand, okay, perfect example. There's this huge article I read one time about how Friends is a horrible show. It's homophobic, it's transphobic, it's a bad show, and you shouldn't watch it, and you're a bad person if you watch Friends. Well, Friends, first of all, I think these people who are saying this are a little bit crybabies, but
Yeah.
Friends, you got to take stuff into the context and when it was made. And this outrage culture is pretty new. It started about 10 years ago, but it's really ramped up. I would say in the last 3 years, 4 years, it's really hit this neurotic, bizarre level that
Yes.
I don't feel comfortable with. And it is humor. There's a lot of offensive things, but they're jokes, and you have to treat them as such.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's kind of what's crazy about where we're at now, because it does apply to comedy, but I think it applies to art in general. If you can't, if you fire every artist that has a colorful past or that has done something offensive, then what you're left with is something really homogenized and something really bland. I mean, musicians, artists, comedians, these people are all notoriously troubled, and just because they have trouble doesn't mean we should completely turn our backs on them. That's what I think is really problematic about society, and then also taking things out of context, because you touched on something that I think we as a society overlook sometimes, and that is that just because a movie has Nazis in it doesn't mean that it's condoning Nazis. If you take it at just face value, and I thought this was true about that show called Confederate that was canceled before it even began, is it doesn't necessarily have to be advocating the thing that it's exploring, like A Handmaid's Tale or The Handmaiden's Tale. It's not saying we want there to be an alternative future where women have no rights. It's saying what if, and how you can challenge those ideas. So I think that's what's important, is understanding the context. And a great example of that, first though, before we do start to wrap it up, is there anything else you wanted to add to this? Because I mean, you had really good points about it.
You reminded me, it's like, I don't know if you remember this, and I've still seen it bubble up now. I don't know if you remember when everyone was calling Quentin Tarantino a racist for making Django and writing the N-word a bunch.
Yes.
I don't know. And I was like, are you guys dense? This Django is not a pro-slavery movie, you fucking morons.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, you can write the N-word. I'll be honest, I'm writing a book right now. There is someone who does say the N-word in it. There's actually a couple people. They're actually based on my friends who are black, and they say the N-word, so that's who they're based on. That doesn't mean I'm a racist. There's also a rape scene in it, and that doesn't mean I condone rape.
Yes.
I think people have lost that thing. People are getting to the point where you can't even say things because then it therefore means you condone it, which is just not true.
Yes.
And I don't know if they truly believe it. This, I do think, was politically a hit on James Gunn. It's funny because usually to me it's the other way. It's the lefty Twitter mob attacks a right-winger person or a celebrity for having marginally right-wing views, and they use any ammo they can against them. And I feel like the right wing just used the same tactic against James Gunn.
Well, and it's hilarious because I read articles that said this is setting a dangerous precedent. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. This precedent was set years ago. You know what I mean? Or not maybe years ago, but at least a year ago.
Oh, years ago. There's literally the day before Mark Duplass had to issue an apology for saying Ben Shapiro was a nice guy. Literally the day before.
Wow. Yeah.
The day before.
Yeah.
And it was outrage culture. And then the next day, this guy who honestly has the right political views for Hollywood says something that is a joke. I don't think they were funny. I thought they were pretty in poor taste, but they were jokes. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden people want to defend him. I'm like, well, because it's the guy on your team.
Yes.
That's the only reason. And we need to get rid of that mentality. You either do support stuff like this or you don't support stuff like this. I fall on the don't support stuff like this. I actually didn't support Roseanne either. I actually didn't support firing her even, and that was modern. But, so
well, and that's fascinating because I agree with you. I didn't feel that was right I didn't feel that the punishment matched the crime with Roseanne. And I feel like because of this team mentality, you can't be on both sides of the fence. You can't make a decision this time that reflects your tribe and still be considered a part of that tribe. And I think that's really a problem with where we're at as society. But I did want to say context is everything. And just to kind of wrap it up on that note, this is an article that came out involving Patton Oswalt. They shared a tweet and tried to basically blackball him because there's a tweet that said, "Rap is performed by monkeys in expensive clothes. Sorry if I offended you, white conservatives, but it's the truth." So they took that one tweet, which if you count the amount of characters on the one that prefaces it, this is the entire tweet. It says, "And I'm sorry, but I fucking hate Fox News. Bunch of race-baiting corporate shills. All of their medieval, fact-free claptrap is performed by monkeys in expensive clothes." So basically the word claptrap had to been cut in half so that autocorrect made the next word rap with a capital R and totally changed the context of the whole thing. So don't make up your mind based on a piece of the puzzle. Try to take the time and go and inform yourself. And me and Caleb don't 100% have the same consensus on this, but at least we have both considered the alternative, considered the other side of it, and tried to present it in a way that's not just black and white, because I think that life is more complicated than that. That if you see in black and white, you're seeing a very oversimplified view of what we are as creatures, and we should be able to have the room to make mistakes and to grow and to not be completely condemned for that. But maybe that's just me being old-fashioned. Caleb, thank you very much for coming by. It's been really good to talk to you again, man. Missed having you on the show, and look forward to doing it again next week.
Absolutely, man. I will be here next week.
Hell yeah. And before we do go, check down in the description where I have posted a link to Caleb's fantastic content. I think the last review you did was Tag. Is that right?
Yeah, that's been it. I've seen a bunch of movies. I'm just a lot of my personal life going on right now.
Understood.
So I haven't done.
Understood. Well, you guys head over there. Make sure to check it out. There will be more content from Caleb Says Stuff coming. And obviously, there's going to be more stuff from Movies Are Terrible coming from right here. I do appreciate those of you guys in the chat that stopped by to enjoy the conversation with us. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this whole situation down in the comment section. Let us know what you thought about the trailers, and if you feel so inclined, head over to Movies Are Terrible on Patreon and consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Caleb, if that's everything,
that's good. I love turtles. That's all I have left to say.
Well, on behalf of me and Caleb Says Stuff, be terrible.